Everything in his life had led to this moment. There was no turning back now. There would be no overturning this conviction. As the nails were pounded in, his sentence was certain. Death. Death by crucifixion. What a horrible way to die. His body lay bare on display for the whole world to see. Everyone looking at him, judging him, like he hadn't been judged enough already. How could his life have turned out this way? Yes, he was a criminal. There was no doubt about it. He had done horrible things. But for things to end like this, how horrible, how shameful. Now, his mind was only filled with regrets. Regrets for the family he would leave behind. Regrets for the shame that he caused his loved ones. Regrets over the horrible things that he had done that had led him to this. But none of these regrets compared to his biggest regret. The regret that this was the end. See, he had never thought about his own ending before, his own demise, his own death. But now upon the cross, he had no choice. He had to accept it. Like so many others before, the last thing he would hear would be the laughter and the scoffing from the Roman soldiers. See, to the soldiers, this day was a day just like any other day. This was their job, carrying out death like it was a simple task. But for him, today was different. Today was his last day. There was no escaping it any longer. Death would soon be his reality. He would soon breathe his last. The worry of finality washed over him as the sun beat upon his face, each breath seeming more labored than the last. Yet, something. Couldn't put his finger on it. Something was different. Something seemed off. I mean, he had never been to a crucifixion himself. I mean, who would go watch this? Something like this. But on this day, there was a crowd. A large crowd had gathered to witness this crucifixion. Looking around, he quickly realized that he didn't recognize anyone. Certainly, no one was there for him. His family and friends had long deserted him. Yet, why? Why were all these people here to see death, to see the end of human life? Maybe, just maybe, they were there for someone else. Glancing around, his eyes met the criminal furthest away from him. That criminal's eyes were dark and blank, kind of like his, just a little bit crazy. Those eyes had been part of hurt. Those eyes had hurt other people. They had brought destruction to others. The people were not here for this man either. So it must be the third man, the one man who seemed different, the one who didn't act like a normal criminal. This must be why the people were here. Now above that man read a sign, King of the Jews. Strange. Why would a man who was a king being put to death? Kings are powerful. Kings are leaders of the people, not criminals who are killed. People had begun to hurl insults at this king. He saved others, let him save himself. If he is the Christ of God, come down. Death is a brutal sentence, much less being mocked by others. It was also apparent that this man had been treated differently. He had been severely beaten. His ribs were visible. His body full of wounds and scars. You could barely make out his eyes because his face was so swollen. What must this man have done to deserve this? What could anyone have done to deserve this? But the soldiers continued to mock him. They had been rough with him the entire way up the hill. It had gotten so bad that this man could not even carry his own cross. Yet he He never struck them back. He never sneered. He never even showed the least bit of anger. How? How could he use such restraint? The criminal thought to himself, he knew in his personal life he could never do something like that. Because as a criminal, when someone punches you, you punch them back. If anyone steals from you, you make sure to steal at least twice back from them. See, that had been justice in his book. But not this man. Not this king of the Jews. Not this man that they called Jesus. The other criminal, the one with the dark and crazy eyes, started to speak up for himself. But his words were mocking, just like the others. Are you not the Christ? Save yourself and us. The others from the ground just laughed. The guards cackled at the words. See, it's one thing to be mocked by the innocent, but it seems even worse to be mocked by the guilty. Criminal could feel his fists now balling up. See, this is where he would lash out at someone, punch back, act out in anger. But from his restrained place on the cross, that was impossible. He looked instead upon Jesus, and what he saw shocked him. Jesus was not angry. Instead, he was sorrowful. Earlier, Jesus had said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. From his cross, Jesus had asked for forgiveness. But it wasn't for his own forgiveness. It was for the forgiveness of others. Who could do that? How could someone in so much pain think of others? He unclenched his fists. Anger and revenge were not the answer. Yet an answer was needed for the other criminal's words. Jesus was innocent. This man they called King of the Jews had saved so many others. He did not deserve this death, and he also did not deserve these insults. Finally, the man could take it no longer, and he lashed out at the other criminal. Don't you fear God? He said. Since you are under the same sentence, we are punished justly, for we are getting what our deeds deserve. But this man has done nothing wrong. To this, the other criminal only sneered. He didn't seem to care. To all three of them, death would soon be coming. But as the one criminal looked upon Jesus, he wondered, was this the end? His whole life had led to this point, yet his crucifixion was unlike any other crucifixion before, because next to him was the man they called Jesus. The scoffers had said it. Jesus had healed and saved others. But could Jesus really save him? He wasn't like Jesus. He was guilty. He had done horrible things. His own family had long since left him. He had been rightly condemned to death. But in this most difficult moment, he wasn't next to a common criminal. He was next to Jesus, the King of the Jews, the one who had saved others. Maybe, just maybe, Jesus could save him as well. He had noticed now at this point that his breathing had begun to get much more difficult. He didn't know how much time he had left, but there were words that he needed to say. He turned and peered into the swollen eyes of Jesus and said, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. The words seemed to hang in the air above the three crosses, and this time no one laughed. No one scoffed. Everyone waited in silence to see what would happen. Jesus slowly lifted his worn body off the cross to speak. Finally, Jesus got out these words, Truly, truly I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. Paradise. The last word seemed to keep playing over and over in the criminal's mind. Jesus had told him that they would be together, but not on this horrible and deathly hill, but instead in paradise. This all seemed too good to be true. How could a criminal receive grace? He'd always spent his life with the wrong people, making the wrong decisions, and all of this had led him to this place on this day. Yet, there was no doubt. There was no doubt about it. He had received grace. Jesus had spoken. And it wasn't a moment too late. The man felt his body now begin to relax. He knew his end on earth was near. But in a moment, in this moment, everything had changed. He knew that this day now was not his ultimate end. There would be eternity of life ahead. And he would spend that eternity with God. Not because of anything that he had done in his own life, but because of this last-minute grace that he received from Jesus. As the sky around him began to draw dark, he slowly began to fade. But no longer was his mind filled with regrets. No longer did he think of all the things he had done wrong in his life. Instead, he whispered to himself over and over again, paradise. Paradise with God ahead. Paradise with God ahead. Paradise with God ahead. Amen.